My boyfriend, who I live with, works as a teacher in a town about 15 minutes away by train. He gets home more or less at the same time every day, give or take an hour or so. I, on the other hand, work from home. In late January of this year, we'd gotten in a pretty big fight about something stupid. I can't even remember what it was about now, but it was one of those fights where we didn't speak to each other, text, call, or anything the whole next day. So this afternoon I was laying in bed getting work done. It was a Tuesday, and I was pretty sure his last class finished at 1 PM on Tuesdays, meaning he'd surely be home at 2:30. But around 1 PM, I heard the front door open and shut. I thought, I guess he's home an hour early today. It was normal for him to skip his last class every once in a while, so I didn't really think anything of it. In fact, I was mostly mentally preparing for the awkward post-fight, "Hey, how is it going?" conversation. So I continued to lie in bed and do my work and wait for him to come in and change his clothes. The bedroom door was closed, and I had earplugs sort of half in, as I usually do when I'm working, but I could hear the heavy footsteps of him walking around the apartment, as he always does. If we hadn't been mid-fight and I wasn't so preoccupied with the awkwardness of it all, I might have noticed it was strange how slow the footsteps were, or how long he spent walking around the living room. But I was caught up in the dramatics of the fight and didn't think about it. I was just lying there, waiting and waiting for him to finally come in. Finally, the bedroom door slowly opened just a few inches. I turned my head towards the door and prepared to give him a sort of awkward smile. But the door didn't open more than a few inches. I looked and saw that it was a woman's hand with red nail polish on the doorknob. Whoever was there slowly closed the door just as they had opened it, without entering the room. I jumped out of bed, ripped out my earplugs, and sort of froze there for a few seconds while thinking rapidly. My first thought, that was not my boyfriend. Then I thought, could that have been his mum, his sister, the landlady? For some reason I concluded that surely it was his mum or sister, so I opened the bedroom door and walked into the living room. There wasn't anyone there, but the room smelled heavily of women's perfume. Then I came to my senses and realized that his mum and sister didn't have keys and have never come over before. The landlady has never entered without permission. This was a stranger. I ran back into the bedroom and shut the door, now shaking heavily. There is a balcony connected to the bedroom, so despite the cold January rain, I stood on the balcony and called my boyfriend. He picked up, and I asked him if his sister or mum might come over unannounced. He told me,
"No, don't move. I'm calling the police now."
The police were there in minutes and searched the whole apartment. Of course, nobody was there by this point. It was weird though. Nothing was missing from the apartment despite us keeping a jar full of money right in the entrance. Nothing was even touched. In fact, it seemed like the intruder just came straight to the bedroom, saw my legs on the bed, panicked and left. Plus, you can't open that big wooden front door without a key. For a few days my boyfriend and I were convinced that it was just the landlady being nosy. I began to feel better. Nevertheless, we demanded that the landlady change our locks. When she came to change them with her husband, she made a discovery. There was a square area by the keyhole that had been scratched away with something. The landlady said surely someone used tools to break into the apartment. Then, a day or two later, my boyfriend told me, "I have to tell you something, but don't freak out." He told me that the orange kitchen scissors were missing. I obviously freaked out. I tore the apartment apart looking for those scissors. It's been 6 months and those scissors are gone. So the whole thing is just creepy and weird. A stranger breaks into a nice apartment, but doesn't touch or take anything valuable, but rather takes scissors from the kitchen, goes right to the bedroom, sees someone in bed, and immediately leaves? I never got to meet the person who opened the door that day. I hope I never do. Towards the end of December 2016, my boyfriend of 7 years and I moved into our first apartment together. We decided we wanted a 2-bedroom apartment with 1.5 baths. We live in a college town, so anything in the actual town was pretty expensive. We had the choice to get a small apartment that was pricey and in town, or a bigger apartment for less money just about 2 miles outside of our hometown. We stupidly chose the latter. The apartment complex was technically in our hometown, but it was also extremely close to the neighbouring town, which was a little less safe. I should mention now that we brought our 2 dogs with us, who I will call Inky and Aris. Inky and Aris are both Pomeranian mixes, who only weigh about 15 pounds each. Anyway, the first couple of months in the apartment were great, and it was so nice to have freedom from our parents. One February night, my boyfriend, Christian, came home from work at 8 PM. Around 9 he decided to take a shower. He brought his dog into the apartment with him, and I was in my room on my computer with my dog, Inky. There was a large window in my room and Inky was looking out of it. Suddenly, he started barking and squeaking really loudly. I could tell that he saw a dog outside, but I thought nothing of it because people just always took their dogs out at night. He then ran into the living room and looked out of the window there. He was still barking and going a little crazy, so I followed him. I got just a few feet outside of my room when I heard someone at the door. The sound I heard was a key in the door, jiggling and struggling to turn the key. I heard the metal jingling and someone twisting the key. At first, I thought it was a maintenance worker because we had one in our apartment earlier that day, but it was late, around 9 PM, and maintenance wouldn't come that late. At this point, Christian came out of the bathroom in a towel because he had heard Inky barking. He and his dog, Aries, ran to the front door to see what was going on with Inky. I heard him yell to me, "There is a dog!" I thought Christian had opened the door and saw a person with their dog walking in the hallway. Our dogs hate other dogs, so I ran to Christian to help. I saw my dog, Inky, so I slammed the door shut. Christian went to put a shirt on, and my heart was racing because I didn't know exactly what was going on. I asked him where his dog, Aries, was, and he told me that he ran after the other dog. Christian came back to the front door with his shirt on. He opened the door and found Aries sitting, like a good boy, at the front door, just waiting to be let back in. After both of our dogs were safe and back in our apartment, we talked about what had just happened. What I learned was that by the time Christian got to the front door the first time, he saw Inky at the front door barking. The front door was wide open, and standing there in our doorway was a man wearing a black hoodie. He had with him his large black dog. It must have been a Rottweiler or another large breed of dog. Keep in mind, Christian was still in a towel only. The man said nothing to Christian, and Christian said nothing to the man. Aris, Christian's dog, chased the man and his dog away, and after they had left, Aris came back to our front door and waited for us to let him back in. I called my dad, who came over immediately, and we told him everything that happened. That man broke into our apartment, and it was the scariest moment of my life. I thought that we were going to get hurt. The scariest part was that this man had a key to our apartment building and the apartment itself. No one could get in without a key, and keep in mind that this was not a forced entry. I only realized later that it must have been an inside job. Christian and I weren't home when the maintenance guy came earlier that day. It didn't occur to us to put away our MacBooks or iPads. The worker must have seen our nice things. He must have figured that since no one was home in the afternoon, no one would be home that night either. I think he gave the key to one of his friends so they could come back to rob the place. I'm so thankful to Inky and Aries. Inky alerted us that someone was there, and Aries chased the man and dog away. I don't know what would have happened if we didn't have the pups with us. Christian came face to face with the man in the hood. I was lucky enough not to meet him, thanks to our courageous dog. Our apartment was broken into again a month later. The intruder again had a key. This time I was home alone, but my dad had bought me a lot of door barricades. so I was more prepared and safe. We learnt that our apartment complex had a history of crime. In April of 2017, a 19-year-old man was killed on the street on which our apartment complex was. In May 2017, after living in our apartment for 5 months, we decided that 2 break-ins and 1 homicide was enough for us. We broke our lease and moved back into our safe hometown. This happened about 5 years ago, after my fiancée and I had been living in our house for a little over a year. I'm 6 feet tall and about 225 pounds. I've always been naturally muscular, and I'm told that I have an intimidating demeanor. My fiancée is 5'2" and weighs maybe 130 pounds. Tiny little thing. Our house is a bi-level home where you walk in the front door and there are 2 half staircases going up to the living room or down to the basement. The only access to our backyard is through the sliding glass door in the upstairs living room and down the stairs from our deck. This is important to remember. During this time, I partied a lot, way more than I should have. I was between jobs and it was towards the end of the holidays, so my interest in finding a new job wasn't quite what it should have been. Many of these nights I was out partying and I would end up just crashing with friends, which meant my fiancée spent many nights alone with our 3 dogs. I had a serious problem with substance abuse, primarily alcohol, and I'm sad to say that I was letting it get the better of me. Fast forward a couple of months and I had just found a new job that had random drug and alcohol tests. I had been sober all of 2 days and had begun repairing my relationship with my fiancée when she told me how glad she was that I was sleeping at home again. I thought nothing of it and kissed her on the head and told her that I was too and that I loved her. Later that night, my fiancée and I were watching TV downstairs when I thought I heard something moving in our backyard. The dogs heard it too, but I dismissed it because they just perked up their ears and really didn't seem to be alarmed. A moment later I heard the noise again and my fiancée very quickly mutes the TV and gives me a very nervous look. "Did you hear that?" she asked, looking very uncomfortable. I told her that it's probably just a few of the neighbouring cats playing in our bushes, as there are quite a few outdoor cats living in the area. But she shook her head and began insisting that this wasn't the case. Before I could even ask her what made her so sure, I hear our sliding glass door upstairs fly open. All 3 of the Great Danes and myself are on our feet in an instant. The dogs let out the most ferocious sounding barks I've ever heard and tore ass up the stairs with me right behind them. As I'm running the first set of stairs, the dogs are reaching the top of the second set and I see the sliding glass door slam, closed, and the silhouette of a man running away. I get to the door and fling it open, and the dogs shove me out of the way to chase after this would-be intruder. I grabbed my flashlight and ran out into the backyard. I had just made it down the deck stairs when I see the dogs freaking out at the back fence. I sprint over and jump the fence just in time to see the man reaching the opposite fence and trying to get over it. He was covered head to toe in black clothing, a thick black hoodie with the hood pulled tight to conceal his face, and jet black cargo pants. Without any regard for my personal safety, I charge the man and just barely miss getting a hold of him as he makes it over the fence. Once more, I follow him over and come around in the front of my neighbour's house just in time to see him hop into an old beaten up pickup and speed off. I watch for a moment as he tears out of the neighbourhood and disappears into the night. I run back home as fast as I can to check on my fiancée and make sure that she's okay. When I walked into the house, she was sitting in the upstairs living room, surrounded by all 3 of our Great Danes and clutching the biggest knife we own. She was obviously shaken up, but ultimately she's a very strong woman and told me that she was ready in case I got in trouble. After calling the cops, giving statements and triple checking to make sure every door and window in the house was locked up tight, we decided to watch another movie as neither of us were tired after the adrenaline rush we had just been through. During the movie, I asked her what made her so sure before that it wasn't just cats playing in the yard. What she told me was enough for me to decide it was time to change my whole life. She said that for about a month now, she'd been hearing strange noises coming from all around the house late at night. She would hear footsteps outside and occasionally what sounded like whispering. When I asked her why she never told anyone, she just shook her head and said that she didn't know. After hearing this, I came to the realization that whoever this man was, he knew that I was never home at night and that my fiancée essentially was all alone most of the time. Fortunately for us, he somehow missed the fact that we have 3 Great Danes, and for whatever reason on this night, he decided not to check and make sure that she was all alone again. Since that day, I've been 100% sober from everything, 5 years now, and I have not left my fiancée alone overnight since. Our relationship has never been stronger, and our 3 Great Danes are 3 of the best dogs anyone could ask for. In the end, this experience has changed my life completely for the better, but creepy wannabe rapist, burglar, whatever you are, let's not meet for your sake.